All right, let's talk about something I think a lot of us can relate to, that constant, nagging stress of financial instability. But here's an idea. What if we could actually design our way out of it? That's what we're digging into today, designing financial stability. So, does this sound familiar? You look at your income and it feels completely all over the place. One month is great, the next, not so much. It's just so unpredictable. And then on the other hand, your expenses feel like they're set in stone, right? The rent, the mortgage, all those bills, they show up like clockwork, and they don't really care if you had a slow month. So, what do? You budget. You try to be disciplined. You cut back where you can. And yet, that feeling of being on edge, that financial stress, it just keeps creeping back. It feels like you're running on a treadmill and getting nowhere. So frustrating.
Well, listen to this. What if the problem isn't you? What if it's not about your effort or your discipline at all? The real issue might just be the financial structure you're trying to work with.
So, if we want to fix the structure, we have to get to the root of the problem. And that brings us to our first section, the stability illusion. This is all about accepting a brand new reality. The first and biggest mistake most of us make is thinking that this instability is just a temporary thing. We tell ourselves, oh, it'll smooth out next quarter, or things will calm down once I get that new gig. We see it as a phase. But here's the hard truth. Our modern economy is literally built on volatility now. Think about it. The gig economy, contract work, pay that's based on performance, entire industries getting disrupted. This isn't an exception anymore. This is the new normal. And this leads us to the single most important mindset shift we can make. We have to stop trying to force our lives to fit this old idea of a stable, predictable income. Instead, we need to design a life that expects and even thrives on a fluctuating income. I'm telling you, once you make that mental switch, it changes everything. Okay, so how in the world do we actually do that? Well, it all starts right here in section 2, where we design a resilient foundation. We're going to rebuild our financial base from the ground up. Now, this is a really powerful way to think about what fragile actually means. It's not just about being in debt. Financial fragility is what happens when your non-negotiable, fixed costs take up way too much of your worst-case monthly income. That's the feeling of being constantly exposed with no breathing room. So, the solution is beautifully simple. You split your budget into 2 layers. Layer 1 is your survival core. These are the absolute must-haves: basic food, shelter, utilities. That's it. Then you have layer 2, your adaptive lifestyle. This is everything else: the fun stuff, the conveniences, the subscriptions. This layer is designed to expand when you have a great month and shrink when you don't. That simple separation turns a potential crisis into just a small adjustment. Okay, so we've got that solid foundation in place. Now we're ready for section 3, create your volatility system. This is where we build the active tools we're going to use to manage those ups and downs. We've all heard it a million times. Build an emergency fund. But that's for, a true disaster. What we need is different. We need a volatility buffer. The mindset shifts from thinking of it as don't touch money to seeing it as a shock absorber. This isn't for a once-in-a-decade catastrophe. It's a working tool you use to smooth out the normal bumps in the road. And why is that buffer so important? Because having accessible cash, liquidity, buys you something incredibly valuable: strategic patience. It gives you the power to say no to a bad client. It gives you the time to wait for the right job offer instead of desperately grabbing the first one. It lets you make smart choices from a position of strength, not panic. Now, what about income? You might think diversifying means you have to be some kind of serial entrepreneur. Not at all. It turns out that getting even just 10 to 20% of your income from a different source, a little freelance work, a side hustle, can massively reduce your financial fragility. It just breaks that dependency on a single point of failure. And yeah, we have to talk about debt, because debt acts like a giant amplifier for all this volatility. The rule of thumb here is really simple. Your absolute worst case, rock bottom income for the month must still be enough to cover your minimum debt payments. If it isn't, then that debt isn't helping you. It's actively making your life more unstable. So we've rebuilt our foundation, we've created our system. Now it's time to bring it all home. Our final section is about adopting a whole new mindset. It's time to embrace elastic stability. What this means is we stop trying to predict the future. We can't. Instead of forecasting one number, we do range planning. You just define 3 scenarios. low, middle, and high income. Then you build your life around it. Your absolute core expenses are covered by the low range. You fund your savings and buffers with the mid-range, and you invest or enjoy the surplus from the high range. See? It becomes an automatic system that adjusts itself. And this really gets to the core of this whole philosophy. For decades, we were all taught to chase rigid stability, the steady, high-paying job with a linear career path. But in today's world, rigid things are brittle. They don't bend, they just break. What we want to build is elastic stability, a system that's designed to bend, to adapt, to contract and expand, but never, ever break. So in the end, we have to let go of this idea that we're aiming for a life that is perfectly smooth and predictable. That's a total illusion. The real goal, the achievable goal, is controlled flexibility. It's about gaining the power to navigate the ups and downs with a sense of control and confidence. And I just want to leave you with this final thought because it says it all. Financial stability isn't something you just hope for. It's not about waiting for your income to magically become stable one day. No, it's something you build. You create it by designing systems that are strong enough to survive and even thrive when your income is anything but stable.
All sources and references for this video are listed in the description below. This video is for educational purposes only and does not constitute financial advice. Please consult a licensed professional for your specific situation.